I learned to sew when I was a small child. My grandmother taught my mom how to sew, so my mom taught my sister and I how to sew. I started with a needle and thread because I was a little too afraid to use the sewing machine at first. Just too afraid to stick that needle right through my finger. But I started with sewing doll clothes and random crafts, just kind of whatever I wanted to throw together. When I was about 15, there was clothes that I wanted, but I couldn't afford. I didn't have a job. My mom wouldn't buy them for me because, ridiculous teenage fashions. So I started to try to learn how to sew, and I took home ec in junior high, made a couple small things, but I really wanted to make a pair of jeans. And I told my mom that, and she's like, "Don't you want to start with something easier?" And I'm like, "No, I'm going to make a pair of jeans." So we went to the fabric store, bought some denim, bought a couple patterns. I mashed them together so that they looked the way I wanted to, made the jeans, and they were completely unwearable. They were awful. I still have them, though, and it's really fun to look at them and see how far I've come in the denim that I do now. That's primarily what I do. But when I was 15 is when I really started trying to sew just more. So that's when I really started making my own clothes. And then when I was 16 was when I decided that I wanted to have my own small apparel company. I remember driving around town with my mom, and if I'd see a storefront that was for rent, I would start imagining what my store was going to look like. I actually had, back in high school, doodled into my notebook what the floor plan was for my future store. But one day it just popped in my head, Dimes and Wednesday. I wrote it down on a piece of paper, stuck it to the side of my pencil cup, and it lived there for years. And when I was finally actually getting around to trying to start my own company, I still enjoyed it. And where it actually comes from is dimes are my favorite unit of coin. They're adorable and, they're valuable. And Wednesday is my favorite day of the week. When I was in elementary school, that was the day that our class went to the library. And so it's just kind of remained my favorite day of the week. And so two of my random favorite things, Dimes and Wednesday, came together for the name. And then a couple years later, I realized that you can go to school for apparel design and you can do this as a living. And so it kind of progressed from there, just sewing. When I wasn't working, I actually got a job, weird job. I worked for a net company up out of Duluth, Minnesota. We made fishing nets, and that was the first place. I was 19. It was the first place I ever used an industrial sewing machine, which is pretty much all I use at this point. So a great introduction to that. And then I ended up going to UW Stout for apparel design and development. After I graduated college, I saw that Project Runway was holding auditions down in Chicago. A few of my friends and I went down. We collected our portfolios and some items that we had made, and we went down and stood out in the cold weather outside of the W Hotel in Chicago, waiting to get in. And they had kind of a screening at the front where they looked through your stuff, and some people were turned away at the door. Other people were allowed to go on. I went in to meet with the judges. One of them was somebody that was on an earlier season of Project Runway, and one judge was Tim Gunn. Fangirling a little bit, but he actually handled some of my items and told me that I was very talented at sewing, which probably one of the best compliments to ever receive. Ultimately, didn't make it on the show. I was not fashion forward enough, which I kind of figured. I make everyday clothing. I make jeans and t-shirts, functional, wearable streetwear. Whereas I'm not coming up with the next most amazing thing. I'm not setting the trends. I am making things that you can wear for years to come. I got my first job in the industry working at Land's End in Dodgeville, Wisconsin. Moved down there. It was really awesome learning how the industry worked on a large scale. Being in school, you get snippets, you learn stuff, but not being actually in it, you can't grasp the entire concept. So learning how to kind of scale my business, my little side business I was trying to start, Dimes and Wednesday, I was able to see how our vendors overseas worked, how the home office worked together between design and technical design and sourcing. Learned just invaluable amounts about running a business that I could then go and scale down to my little operation out of my home. So I worked for Land's End for just over 4 years. After I left there, I went and worked in quality control for ShopBop. And it was kind of a flip side of the apparel industry where I wasn't on the front end, I was on the back end, receiving, all these clothes from amazing designers, and being in quality control, I got to have my hands all over them, look at the construction techniques that they use, look at some of these like couture gowns, which I don't do gowns, I don't do formal wear, but just being able to see the way that things are made at such a higher level was amazing. Just little tiny details that maybe nobody else is going to notice, but just puts that like finishing touch on the clothes. That was awesome. And then also just learning how, the back end of things worked, and like working on like an internet retail environment also helped for my path to like getting my own website and kind of having a better idea of writing, the descriptions for the clothing and how to focus on the clothes for the photography and just kind of bring it all together. So it was, even though it wasn't the front end of the apparel business, it was still an invaluable part in my moving forward with my own business. Like that guy. After graduating college and working in the industry, I realized how much I needed to have a dress form, but some of them are pretty expensive if you want like a really nice one. And I got this lady off of eBay for about $300, and certainly not the highest quality, but she's come in handy. Had to pad her out in some areas just to make her fit like my customer base. In 2014, I came across a group of girls in Madison that were getting ready to put on a runway show. I ended up participating in it. It was at the main library downtown. I had 7 models, made all their outfits. It was an amazing experience being able to pick the music that my models were walking down the runway to, seeing the professional photography afterwards, having hair and makeup done for them, and just like the more drive that it put into me to continue working, just being able to see my stuff on a stage, my clothing on a stage. One of my customers who purchased a pair of my jeans back in 2015 contacted me just this last year saying that finally there had been a hole worn in the knee. And she's like, I've had these jeans for 5 years. I wear them 2 to 3 times a week, and I want to be able to wear them for longer. And I ended up fixing the hole for her so that she can get many more years of wear out of them. But just, you buy these $20 jeans from a big box store, and less than a year later, you're throwing them away or you're cutting them into shorts. And it took 5 years for a hole to wear into a knee of my product. So